Felix, an 18-year-old college student, went for a summer internship at a company specializing in IT technologies. He was fortunate enough to get a chance to work under the supervision of Scarlett, an experienced manager with extensive expertise in developing software for small businesses. Scarlett, a 41-year-old fit woman, was known for her high standards and professionalism. She welcomed Felix warmly and immediately took him under her wing. Felix, full of enthusiasm and hope, started his work at his first company. He was eager to learn and to prove himself. In the first weeks, everything went smoothly. Felix delved into the work, gaining experience and gradually realizing how lucky he was to have Scarlett as his mentor. Scarlett supported him and often praised him for his hard work and diligence. Everything changed when Scarlett started finding reasons to keep Felix after work. At first, it seemed innocent, discussing projects, correcting reports, but soon her behavior became more personal and ambiguous. She gave him hints that he couldn't ignore and looked at him with a strange, flirtatious gaze. Felix felt uncomfortable. On one hand, he liked Scarlett, and her attention boosted his self-esteem. On the other hand, he understood that such behavior was inappropriate. He tried to keep his distance, but each time Scarlett asked him to stay, it was hard for him to refuse. One evening, Scarlett asked Felix to stay after work and come to her office. She started praising him, saying that thanks to his efforts, the company had met its targets. She suggested they celebrate and brought out a bottle of wine. Not wanting to offend his boss, Felix agreed. The evening transitioned into informal conversation. At first, they talked about work, but soon the discussion turned to more personal topics. The atmosphere became increasingly relaxed. At one point, a spark ignited between them, and they made love right there in Scarlett's office. This event changed everything. After that night, work was no longer the same. Felix and Scarlett stayed after work in her office more and more often. Their relationship became more intimate, though they tried to maintain a facade of professionalism in front of the other employees. Felix thought this was the best summer of his life. He was combining business with pleasure in the truest sense and didn't worry about the consequences. After all, once the internship was over, he would never see Scarlett again, and for both of them, it was an exciting adventure. Everything was going as usual until one day Scarlett suddenly didn't come to work. Felix tried to call her, but her phone was turned off. A few more days passed, and rumors started spreading at work. Some speculated that Scarlett had taken an unplanned vacation, while others feared the worst. Soon, the most terrible news arrived. A woman's body was found in the forest. The police quickly identified the deceased. It was Scarlett. The police began actively investigating Scarlett's murder. In the early days, there were few clues, and the case seemed perplexing. Investigators turned to Scarlett's colleagues, trying to understand what might have happened. Felix was one of the first to be questioned. He tried to answer calmly, not revealing his emotions. The police learned that Scarlett often stayed late at work, but no one thought to link her disappearance to Felix. Meanwhile, Martin, Scarlett's husband, was the focus of the police's attention. Martin, a 52-year-old manager with potency problems, was the one who called the police on the night he returned home after meeting friends at a bar and found his wife missing. Now, let's go back to the day of the disappearance. When Scarlett started frequently staying late at work, Martin began to suspect her of infidelity. He decided to track where she spent her evenings, but she was indeed at work. Then he decided to check her messages and discovered intimate messages with Felix and other young employees. This opened his eyes. Scarlett had been cheating on him more than once. Consumed by rage and jealousy, Martin devised an almost perfect plan for revenge. He arranged to meet friends at a bar in the evening to create an alibi. An hour before this, he called Scarlett and offered to pick her up from work. Scarlett, unsuspecting, agreed. When Martin and Scarlett were driving home, he stopped in a deserted place and strangled her. He put her body in the trunk and drove to the bar, where he spent several hours socializing with friends and strengthening his alibi. After the meeting, he took Scarlett's body to the forest and left it there. Returning home, Martin called the police and reported that he had returned from the bar and found his wife missing. After the incident, Martin, despite his outward coldness and confidence, was deeply shaken by what had happened. Scarlett's death left an indelible mark on his soul, and he couldn't rid himself of the constant feeling of guilt and fear of being exposed. Each day, this feeling consumed him more and more, giving him no peace day or night. He felt that those around him suspected something, that the police would soon uncover the truth, although his alibi seemed unbreakable. In an attempt to cope with the growing anxiety, Martin decided to see a psychologist. He chose an anonymous online service, hoping it would help him deal with his inner demons while remaining safe. The psychologist Martin started talking to immediately noticed his deep depression and anxiety. During the sessions, Martin spoke about his guilt without revealing details. However, with each session, he became more open. One day, unable to withstand the inner tension, he confessed to his wife's murder. He described how he had long suspected his wife of infidelity, how he had read her messages, and how rage had consumed him when he realized that Scarlett was cheating on him with young employees. However, Martin overlooked one important detail. In the modern world, nothing is truly anonymous. The psychologist, realizing he was dealing with a real crime, was obligated to report it to the authorities. Upon receiving the information from the psychologist, the police immediately took action. Using the data provided, they were able to trace Martin's IP address and location. Martin was arrested at his home. He was shocked when the police showed up with an arrest warrant. His entire world collapsed in an instant. He was charged with Scarlett's murder, and despite his initial attempts to deny it, under the weight of the evidence, he was forced to confess. During interrogations, Martin detailed his suspicions, jealousy, and rage that led him to murder his wife. Felix, upon learning about the resolution of the murder, was stunned. He couldn't believe that Martin, Scarlett's husband, was behind it all. Felix felt a deep sense of guilt for his involvement with Scarlett, which indirectly led to her death. Despite not being directly involved in the murder, his participation in the secret meetings became a catalyst for the events. Martin was convicted of murder and sentenced to 20 years in prison. His confession and cooperation with the police mitigated the sentence, but he still received his deserved punishment.